So he is the game changer, Chris Wylie, over on Instagram. You guys go check him out. And Chris, I have seen you online. You obviously like my stuff. That's how I found you. And so I'm like, this guy. So I click on it and I see you've had all kinds of interesting experiences. But dude, you have like knowledge of a subject matter that I think everybody in the world needs to know about right now. And that's how to get your mind right. Because people are out of their minds. Just as of the recording of this, I posted kind of a video yesterday on IGTV with all these people arguing over masks and having these kind of mindsets of, no, you shouldn't wear a mask. Yes, you should wear a mask. And then butting heads. Like, help us out, brother. Like, this is your gift to the world today, Chris. Tell us what's going on.
Well, this is kind of, Jimmy, this is kind of the time where all those psychological terms that people talk about, we get to see in live action now.
Yes.
Right? Because, you hear psychologists talk about, misattribution of arousal kind of thing. So this is where people are all pent up and frustrated about the entire situation. Financial difficulty, life difficulty, career difficulty. Now, all of a sudden, you go into a store and little old Jimmy or little old Johnny says, hey, put your mask on. Now, suddenly, the guy just unleashes all his pent-up anger on him. So, very difficult time for mental health. Basically, and predominantly from the fact that now people are in a situation where we have so much time to think being isolated. And anyone who's ever dealt with depression or mental health illnesses, you'll notice that one of the things that happens is very often people will just isolate, seclude, remove themselves, which basically means there's more time for this thing to start running wild. And this is a Ferrari brain that no one has given us the owner's manual. Say, look, this is how you drive. You got anxiety? Okay, this is what you got to do. You got bad feelings or mood swings? This is what you can do to begin to change that. So I'd be happy to dive deep into controlling, mastering, and most importantly, just deliberately directing all those conscious and unconscious processes.
Absolutely. And that's the thing I love about your work. He's a brain transformation specialist, you guys. So what that means is he knows how the brain operates. And when certain circumstances come, you're the owner of the circumstance. And that's what's so funny about all these videos that I see online that go viral and people acting crazy is at the end of the day, they have control over the thoughts that leads them to the bad behavior. And if you could get people to catch themselves before the bad behavior comes, that's kind of what you're doing in your work. And you've used I've seen some videos where you do live events, or you did do live events. That's going to happen again. But you would like hypnotize people and get them to transform the way they would behave based on that as well. Talk about some of that work.
Yeah, I'm working on mastering the Skype hypnosis. All right, I've had some people walk in on sessions and look and wonder what in the hell we're doing because the son or daughter has their arm cataleptic in the air and it's moving towards the nose and the parent's just standing there and what kind of voodoo shit is this? It's just me working on my Skype hypnosis skills. Now, you mentioned a really interesting point there about the essence of control. And what happens is you mentioned another super important thing is the trick is to get ahead of these behaviors, because in the moment, what happens is these are just people carrying out learned automatic responses, and our brain is a generalizing machine. It's designed to automate everything so we can do stuff without thinking about it. So anxiety, depression, these are the kinds of things that your brain has just learned and is doing automatically, and before you know it, your body's racking with anxiety. So the trick is you really do have to get in front of it, because by the time you're filled with anxiety or by the time you're filled with rage, it's too darn late. Right. You know what I mean? And you just nailed that perfectly. So the trick is to be able to get ahead of it and address the two major components. Really, the first major component is how you're thinking about things, and how you're thinking about things is going to produce how you feel and change what you're able to do. And a lot of this stuff is unconscious. No one never thinks about this stuff. But very often, Jimmy, anxiety, for example, is a classic case half the time of absolutely terrible bad planning, right? People think about, losing all their savings, never being able to recover, getting sick and passing away. And I'm just going, that's a really bad plan. You know, does that seem like a smart thing to think to help you get through this situation? Of course, the answer is no. Are the, people talk about, I mean, you're in the public field, you're doing public speaking, you're getting on camera, you're giving people a good time, you're teaching them valuable things. Public speaking is the number one fear. Now, I don't know about you, but the fact that public speaking is the number one fear for people, it just made me want to go master it. It's just like, oh, okay, I like this. If everybody scares the crap out of everyone else, I want to learn this.
Yes.
And that's another case where very often people do the case of bad planning, where they see themselves getting in front of a group, choking, not responding, people looking at them like they have 10 heads and laughing them off stage, throwing tomatoes at them. And I'm going, so this is how you think to get yourself kind of in the mood for public speaking. So a lot of this stuff does.
I was going to say, people fear public speaking because they've been told you're supposed to fear public speaking. And so it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that if you're told something, you subliminally in your back of your mind, oh my gosh, you fear public speaking because it's fearful. And so nobody ever takes the leap and go, okay, let me give it a go and see how it goes. Like, I used to be terrified. I know it's shocking now because I'm on camera every day and I'm doing podcasts and I public speak. It's no big deal. But I was one of the shyest people in high school. And never liked taking public speaking. In college, I made myself take a public speaking course. And it didn't become comfortable until I did it and did it and did it. But then the mind changed and said, I don't really, at the end of the day, care what anybody thinks about me. So,
yeah, good man. Good man. You know what the part I love about public speaking is, Jimmy? Is the audience has no idea what you're going to say.
No.
So if you mess up, they have no clue.
Right.
Now, as long as you keep rolling with it and using the last word to lead to the next word, then you're going to be all good. I've done a talk where I said something and people looked at me like I had 10 heads. And then I just put up my hand and I said, and that's what most people say. Now, let me tell you what I do. Right. Or even if I'm doing hypnosis, I do something and it doesn't work and people kind of react. And I'll go, and that's what most hypnotists do. Now, let me show you what we're going to do. And I'll do the exact opposite, adapt on the fly, right?
I'll tell you what I do. So if I'm saying something and I'm not quite getting the words out right, I'll make a joke about it. You get laughing, you calm them down, and then you kind of pivot. And that's what I hear you saying that's what most say. That's kind of that's what most say. I make it funny. Try to crack a joke about it. And even when I do my live show, Jimmy Rants, I'll sometimes get a hater on there that'll try to say stuff, and I'll turn it back on them, just have fun with it. And it's just like the very first episode back from my sabbatical. I was gone for 6 months last year into this year. My very first episode back, this guy's like, man, you're still fat, man. You should probably work on that. And I said, I lifted my shirt up on camera, showed my belly and said, okay, and?
Yeah.
Thank you for stating the obvious, but you're not going to shame me into feeling bad about that.
He called, I'm lucky he's still alive to tell the tale. Now you're
Put 3. I can probably kick a few people's butts, and I'm gentle and everything. But if he was here and told that live, he may be on the floor picking up his teeth.
Yeah. And that guy has how much knowledge about nutrition and health? Probably zero, right? So, I mean, he obviously doesn't understand that everybody's unique, and you're optimizing yourself clearly. So, I mean, those types of people, they're going to be real successful in life, not right.
Because I think this is so applicable. I think sometimes one of the things that people allow to happen, and I say that very deliberately, allow to happen.
Yeah.
They let the judgments of other people dictate how they live their lives. And I can't tell you how many people go through their entire lives basically letting their life come to them rather than going at life. Now, I'm one of those go at life people. I know you are as well. How do you get people to get out of that, letting life dictate what they do?
Great question. And that really starts with is number one, you got to start to clear away the things that are holding people back. And those are the learned habits, behaviors, things that people are doing automatically. Right. And we mentioned the public speaking. Basically, there's a huge fear of social embarrassment. It really is one of the most primal fundamental human fears is looking bad in a social situation. And then let's face it, we all were in grade 3, and to reassure the teacher that we could read, we had to get up in front of the class and we had to read off a book and recite it to reassure the teacher, not ourselves. Now, the crappy thing is a lot of us still read with that grade 3 voice in our head. And, you know, it's the first time we did it. We probably weren't good at it. So now we have the grade 3 bad memory that pops up in our head every time we go to public speaking. So number one is we got to start cleaning up a lot of the habits and things that are getting in your way. And that's the anxiety, the bad feelings, the limiting beliefs, really pretty much just a crappy states. And the biggest thing is, Jimmy, is all our limits in our abilities, and you'll have glimpses of this as a public speaker, as a creator, is you'll get into those states where it's absolutely pouring. And this is like super ultra, maybe even enlightened Jimmy, just bringing it left, right, and center. And you're just thinking, damn, if I could, you know, only bring it every single time like this, Jimmy. And then you have other times where you're not in that peak creativity. You're not accessing, those brilliant ideas, that level of focus, that level of composure. So the first thing to realize is that these mental abilities are state dependent. And the name of the game is really looking at the situation you want to go into and think about what's the optimal state for me to be in that situation, and then programming your brain to get in it. So,
well, and part of that programming isn't just the mechanics of changing your brain. You actually have to feed yourself a certain way, live a certain lifestyle. I love your videos where like you're out in the middle of the forest, man, and you got no shirt on, your hairy chest and you're buff and everything, and you're out there picking mushrooms and you're getting sunlight and you're exercising, lifting logs. There's so much to it that's related to diet and health, which is my degree, that I want you to kind of hit on that. Like, what are people not doing that they should be doing to change their brain?
Nutritionally, I mean, this is the fuel you're putting in your body. This is what you're giving your brain as the substrates to build its neurochemistry. So it's the easiest, simplest thing, and people love nutrition. I find I do a webinar on nutrition, and people just love it. So nutrition is the easiest way to change your neurochemistry. We all know it's very hard to go out in nature with all kinds of greenery, the birds singing, the sun shining down, raising your vitamin D levels. That's not when you're feeling bad. That's not when you have a panic attack, right? So these environmental things, they entrain our brain. So nature, the Schumann resonance, how grounding kind of works is you get this nice alpha rhythm and your body entrains to it. Sunlight, you're getting the vitamin D from the sun, which is helping raise steroids and dopamine levels. Then if you're moving around, movement's fundamental to raising dopamine. And then looking at the nutrition, I've really, and especially in my studies and in doing EEGs, I've really studied a lot on DHA. And DHA, people know the health benefits of fish oil. It's shown universally in almost every study to enhance cognition. It's been shown in pregnant mothers before birth. Taking DHA and consuming higher amounts of DHA shown with higher intelligence. And DHA is a fundamental component of our cell membranes. So I think getting a source of DHA is very important. Wild seafood, grass-fed meats, supplementation you can do. And then what I like to do is I like to combine that with, you'll see me, getting the chaga mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, and people are watching. Why is this guy so excited about these darn mushrooms? Well, these mushrooms are loaded with phytonutrients and basically molecules that enhance our neurochemistry and our immunity, right? So whenever our immunity, our neurochemistry is suppressed, it's going to make us susceptible to things like depression, things like, immune health issues, which is going to basically bring everything down. So I like adding in a lot of superfoods, using the chaga, combining that with things like cacao, which is loaded with magnesium, zinc, getting lots of the healthy fats. I mean, I consume unbelievable amounts of fats, and people don't believe it. I mean, I just ate 6 whole eggs before going on to this with a few tablespoons. I mean, you had 8? Oh, damn, brother. I got to up my game. Dude, I got to get my game to loving level.
And probably for most of the day. That's the beautiful thing. When you eat well and you're nourished well, your body doesn't even think about this snacking idea.
No. No. And I mean, the snacking idea that's the problem with dieting, especially most diets, is what happens is people are thinking about food all day and they don't get to eat a single bit of it, right? They're thinking about their favorite foods that they normally eat, and they're thinking about it for 10 hours a day, and they can't even eat it because it's not part of their diet thing, right? So then the brain, the whole time they're thinking, oh, well, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that. And you're feeling bad about the whole damn thing, as opposed to thinking about what you're going to get as a result of eating like that, right?
Well, I hate the terminology I can't have. I love when people reframe it, and this is a good mental exercise for anybody that hadn't heard this before. Rather than talking about the things you can't have, say instead, I choose not to because I have a bigger goal. Then the brain kind of goes, okay, no, I don't want that because I have bigger goals in mind than the temporary pleasure than having that would be.
Big time. And that's one of the keys to helping to overcome an addiction. Is an addiction, let's face it, if you're addicted to alcohol or even your comfort foods, it produces a good feeling in you, even if it's momentary. So you need to build something that's going to give people a greater sense of accomplishment, a greater sense of reward, a greater boost in dopamine, a better feeling to move towards. And that usually comes with finding an identity and a purpose and a target for their brain that is more important to them. And, you know, it could be health related. A lot of times, you know, especially with women I work with, is they'll quit smoking and they'll quit the unhealthy foods the moment the thought of having children comes in. Because then it gets activated. Okay, I want healthy mom with healthy kids. And then they never look back and it's not a problem.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about the various modalities of being outside and getting the sunshine, the fresh air, and the exercise. One thing that does as well that benefits the brain health is it sets your circadian rhythm. People, I don't think, Chris, they honor the circadian rhythm nearly enough. And if you allow that natural sunlight to come into the eyes, it tells your brain, going through the eyes to the brain, hey, dummy, it's noon. Hey, dummy, it's 4.
Yeah.
8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, whenever you start to get sleepy, the brain's like, oh, it's time to shut down. Melatonin production goes up and you get restful sleep, which, oh yeah, by the way, also recharges your brain.
Huge, huge. And even just fixing the sleep and focusing on that, that's going to clean up so many issues when it comes to memory, when it comes to learning, when it comes to mood alterations. Right. I mean, I do have family members, and probably some people are watching this, you know, or might be a little guilty of it themselves, is they can't sleep. And then what they do is because they can't sleep, they go turn the TV on. So now they're getting the blue light from the TV and the brain's going, is it middle of the day?
Right.
And, you know, and you're basically just totally, you know, screwing your brain there. So that's where building those rituals to enhance sleep. And it could be a simple meditation. It could be an emptiness meditation. I find emptiness meditation before bed, basically clearing your mind, clearing your thoughts, to be very effective. Because during sleep, that's when our brain is sorting, systematizing, learning everything. And if you haven't organized that in advance, I mean, your dreams are going to be bad shit crazy. Your brain's going to be combining this, that. Oh my goodness, I saw a snake on Wednesday. I saw a plane there. I saw my old friend Jessica. And you're not going to believe what your brain's going to show you in your dreams about those things.
Jessica is what it will show you. So
yeah, it'll be an interesting dream. You might want to keep it to yourself.
So I use this tracker called Ura. They're not a sponsor or anything. I love the data though. Do you use any kind of tracking data like that for your sleep or anything?
Great question. That was something I did more so a few years back in the beginning when I was tracking everything. I would actually, I would do full 20 channel EEGs. So I'd be able to measure and see where my brain waves are at different times during the day. Right. And I could basically predict and know how I slept based on what my brain waves were when I got up and went to bed and stuff.
Well, and there's where I'm going. I've had this thing about 3 years now. I was one of the first beta testers, and then it came out, and I've had it ever since.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, have looked at the data. I know when I wake up in the morning how I feel.
Yeah.
How sleep was. And I know if I was just in a REM cycle, I know if I'm just in a deep, there's a certain feeling. With the deep, I feel a real heaviness on the body. Yeah. Okay, I just came out of a deep cycle. or if I was in a REM cycle, I can feel my brain just going, and I can also like continue. I'm like, wait, I'm at the cliffhanger part of the movie. I've got to see how it ends.
I know, eh?
And so I'm in the REM. I know when that happens. And then if I wake up and have neither of those feelings, okay, I've been in kind of a lighter sleep. And sure enough, almost I can predict it now. Before I even look at the data on my phone, I know exactly where I am. So this is indicative of like the quantifying of it, but I'm pretty dialed in with it. And it's so amazing those days that I know I didn't sleep well.
Yeah.
How horrible this is. And people are like, well, you're just groggy and sleepy. No, it goes beyond that. There's been studies that have been shown you have one bad night of sleep, you're already insulin resistant just from the lack of sleep. Never mind your body weight, never mind blood sugar. You have that insulin resistance going on. Now you can switch it around, make up the sleep and push your body back into another one. That's why people are so hungry. They have the cravings, their brain's telling them eat, and it's really a false signal.
Oh yeah. Big time. And I love that you mentioned that. And that's kind of the level I would love people to graduate to and evolve to, is developing that sense of biofeedback awareness where you can use a device like that and actually use it as a biofeedback device to entrain and develop your internal awareness. So that way, ultimately, you can get to the point with no technology and you're basically like an enlightened yogi and you have complete control over brain, mind, body. So that's what kind of level I've worked on. And yeah, I mean, we don't need to go to caves and meditate and recluse from the world, because I kind of like the world. It's kind of cool to, meet new people like yourself and stuff, have a good time.
Well, I liked the world before 2020. This one's been one effed up year, man. So.
It has been.
Well, and you were on a reality show. You're in Canada, and so you were on Big Brother Canada. Is that right?
Yeah, I was on Big Brother Canada. I wasn't allowed to go on the Big Brother US one. As much as I love you guys, there's certain shows you have to be a American citizen.
So you were on Brother Canada, and when all this went down, weren't you in the house still?
I was locked up in this house. So Jimmy, every single thing that we don't advocate, I was drinking tap water. I was eating, not the kind of ketogenic foods we want to eat. And that's where all these mental skills came in, because it was very difficult. So we were completely cut off from society. We didn't even know what time it was. They would change their clocks on us. We get up, I'd go run out to check the sun. I'd program the clock. Then there'd be a break and they changed the time and we wouldn't know what time it was.
Did you know COVID existed? Did they tell you that?
We knew beforehand that was a possibility. I heard of it. And then basically what would happen is, so we were locked in there for 40 days before it unfortunately got canceled. Then one of us thought to ask the question, hey, how are sports leagues going? And when they said that sports leagues were canceled, we're like, okay, this is pretty darn serious here. The world is kind of shut down and gone to a stop.
What I loved about your experience in there, and I hate that they cut it short, but for the obvious reasons they had to, unless they tested you for COVID every day on the set, is that you were helping your fellow contestants stay sane, because a lot of them probably had the anxiousness and everything coming out. I mean, it's already built in a reality show to try to get you to have emotional outbursts, which you had a competitive advantage even if COVID had not happened. Yeah. But you were helping them out. Talk about some of that.
Yeah, it was really, really huge. And you can just imagine like being in a situation where you're cut off from everything and you don't have any rituals of comfort. You don't have your comfort foods. You don't have your comfort TV. You don't have your comfort friends that you can call to rely on. So it was very difficult mentally, right? And pretty much what we ate was controlled. Our schedule was controlled. So it was very difficult. And of course, the name of the game is everyone's lying behind everyone's back and scheming. All right. So, and it was funny. Someone came up to me and was like, aren't you worried about people are lying behind my back? I go, I already know they're lying behind my back, so I don't need to worry about it. So I was working. There was a nice girl. There's, lots of people in there, actually a few who are on the ketogenic diet kind of thing. So it was really tough on them. So I was just doing my best to help them, remain calm, stay focused on why they were there, who they were representing, and to make the most of the situation and to enjoy, the crappy parts and the good parts. And Yeah, I mean, they didn't show a lot of that stuff on TV. They showed a little bit, but I was in there meditating with some of them. I had the people who were in my alliance and stuff, so I was making sure they were in peak kind of mental form before those competitions. So we were doing some meditation. I even broke out a little Shaolin Qigong meditation before a mental comp. Jimmy, I had a mental comp. My butt was on the line. And as a brain guy, I had no choice. If I didn't win that mental comp, dude, I would have been roasted. Right? I went in there. I took the mental memory comp.
Nice.
Yeah.
Talk about how you got on the show. Were they intrigued by your work as a brain specialist? Or what got you on the show?
I'm probably not officially allowed to talk about these details, but it was an opportunity, and it ended up making a lot of sense. And with the whole COVID situation, it's not like I was missing out in private practice worker time. So, it's unfortunate it got cut short, but it was a pretty cool experience. It was a good experience, Jimmy, where I get to actually apply my own medicine here. I get to actually, okay, let's throw yourself in the fire here. And next to, going to the Himalayas and meditating in a cave for 40 days, I mean, it was kind of like a retreat, man. It was a pretty crazy whirlwind retreat, but it was pretty cool.
Well, if you call yourself a brain transformation specialist and you go on a reality show, you better darn well show that you got some kind of acumen there.
Hell yeah.
Well, let's get into like the uncertainty. Like this is something that I don't think the human brain handles very well, is uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, I've been reading up, you're definitely the expert on this, but I've been reading how the brain starts to write a narrative about what is. So that way it has something to hold on to rather than this kind of uncertainty that just hangs over. The brain can't handle that. So this is probably why you've got some people that are saying COVID-19, it's just all a hoax. They're just trying to cover it up so we can get to the presidential election and it's all going to go away. So that's what one narrative is saying in people's minds. Other people say, this is the worst Black Plague ever. Oh my God. And it's a solidified, even though negative, it's still a solidified thought. And then you've got a whole bunch of people that are like, I don't know what to believe. And they haven't created that narrative yet. So how do you help people in this time of uncertainty?
That's a huge, huge point. And that's one of the things our brain is designed to do, is to bring certainty to uncertainty, right? That's what our conscious mind is kind of designed to do, is to go into an uncertain situation, build a blueprint, and then manifest the blueprint. Now, in this situation, with so much in flux, time periods up in the air, it really is a test of your ability to handle discomfort and remain flexible, right? So this is where in every situation, it's kind of the whole yin and yang, is there's a positive or a way you can use this situation to capitalize, benefit, and make the most out of it, right? And if there's any chance to optimize this situation, this current situation you're in, you want to be one of the ones who's looking for it. Because if you don't look for it, you sure ain't going to find it. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is our brain and our mind especially, it works by pattern recognition. So you just mentioned two main patterns that people could look for. Now, the interesting thing with the brain, and this is the numbers things, when people start seeing 1111 or 222, and people start going, hey, am I enlightened? I go, it's very possible you could be enlightened, or your brain is just noticing a pattern and showing you everywhere. It's like when you buy a new car, you get a new car, then suddenly you start seeing the cars everywhere. And you're like, damn, where'd all these cars come from? Did they just plop down from Pluto, or were they there all along? They were there all along. It's just you don't start seeing them until the pattern becomes personally important and relevant, right? So when someone is thinking like that, oh my God, it's the black, it's the plague, it's the end of the world, their brain is going to start pointing out and showing them, oh my God, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that, and showing you everything that's connected to it. So it will self-fulfill that belief, that thought, right? And the same thing, if someone's thinking, oh, it's just a hoax, well, then their brain's going to start to see all the clues or potential pieces that could be connected to it being a hoax. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, you know what, I'm going to optimize this time. I'm going to exploit this time. I'm going to turn this crappy situation into the best situation ever, right? Because, hey, maybe it's the best time to build online business. I don't know. Everyone's glued to what? Their cell phones and TVs. So you think it's a good time to build an online business. If you haven't built an online business, I'm wondering, ladies and gentlemen, what the hell have you been doing? So if you're starting to look for how you can turn this situation to a positive and exploit it and really capitalize on it, then your brain's going to start thinking on it and chewing on it. And we know all the brilliant ideas come from our unconscious when we're not thinking about it. We're in the shower in a nice little theta state. That's when those ideas start popping, right? Or, you know, when you're rolling around in bed just before you get up in that hypnagogic state, that's where, you know, the super ideas crystallize in your mind, right? And all you got to do is just kind of allow your brain to show you those things. You just got to basically direct it. So bad shit's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well find a way to optimize the time.
Yeah, I'm writing in my head all the time new books. Like I've written a whole ton of books over the year. I got 9 of them now, but there's 10 more right here that every day I'm writing a little bit more on this chapter. I've got this concept, maybe this kind of marketing term to do this acronym. I'm all the time thinking, but not everybody gets to that level of thinking. It's been entrained for years, by the way, guys. Don't think I just woke up one day and poof, I start thinking about books. No, because I've gone through the process, because I've trained myself, that's how I write. I write here and then I write it out. That's become, with practice, thousands and thousands of hours of practice. It's why I can do podcasts on a whim. I've done well over 10,000 hours of podcasts over the years. And so how do you get people there? Because most people are very content with just letting the brain go where it's going to go without really entraining it ever.
Yeah, huge. Like that's pretty big. And that's where usually, number one, I'm going to elicit Jimmy's book writing strategy, how Jimmy thinks about writing books, because you got a lot more books written than I do. I got to work. I'm working on polishing off the first one. So, you know, what I would do is I would discern Jimmy's book writing strategy. Then I would teach that strategy for writing, producing books to someone who hasn't been producing books but wants to produce books. So obviously the way you think about writing a book and getting to completion, it's something that works, right? So there's certain ways you think about writing a book that leads to success, as opposed to people who aren't writing books, they're not thinking successfully. Now, the biggest thing for change is problems don't feel bad enough, and you don't get that immediate feedback. It's like with smoking, especially with nutrition. This is where these effects of bad habits, bad foods, they don't produce an immediate aversive response like you putting your hand on a hot stove and getting burned, right? Because if you got burned like that after eating a potato chip, you probably would think twice about eating the potato chip again. So this is where our bad habits, they don't feel bad enough. And it's only till you reach that threshold of being totally fed up with your problems, that's when people go, enough is enough. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. They get fed up, they go, screw it, and then they move forward. So you want to accelerate, help someone get to that state of enough is enough, where they get fed up with their problems and then they focus in a new direction. So that's fundamental to change work.
And you think about, absolutely, by the way, you think about the boiled frog analogy. So if you put a frog into a boiling water, they will jump out immediately. Oh my gosh, that was horrible. If you put a frog in cold water and turn on the heat and slowly start the boil, they will boil to death.
Yeah.
Like, people don't realize maybe they're in the pot that's cold and it's slowly warming up. So at what point do they become conscious of it? And some people will be like the frog and never will until the day they die.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, unfortunately, the beliefs and precepts, especially in the field of, psychology and some in self-development, that people don't believe. The poor old frog, they don't believe that they can get out of that hot water. They believe that they're doomed to it because of genetic determinism, which now we're knowing via neuroplasticity and epigenetics really couldn't be further from the truth, right? Every single decision you're making in terms of what you're putting in your body, the environment you're exposed to, even the thoughts that you think, Jimmy. I measured this with EEGs. You won't believe, right? I had a poor old woman who I was working with a few days ago, and she just thought about a past relationship that stressed her. And you wouldn't believe the stress response you see in the brain. Now that's just one little crappy thought. Changing your brain waves and neurochemistry in real time. So that's where you want to look at all aspects of yourself, your mind, your brain, your body, and get everything working to your advantage.
Man, I can tell you, I don't have a photographic memory, but
Yeah.
I remember things in movies. Like I'll have something that will trigger a thought, and then I go, "Oh yeah, that," and then I feel the emotion of that time. Now I recognize it as it's happening, and I go, "Okay, it's not real, Jimmy. Chill out. I know it was a traumatic thing." Like for example, I was abused when I was a teenager, and so I remember that day that my dad slammed my head into a wall. Like it's a video that just plays in my head. Now I don't dwell on it, but it's still there. And I suppose it's there because I do think about things a little more deeply than a lot of people. And so I've learned to manage it to the point that I think it has made me more resilient when it comes to other thoughts that could be potentially bad, that I do feel the feels, but I don't act on that feel.
Yeah. And that's where not everyone is like you in that sense. Sometimes those types of experiences can eat people up. And that's where changing how those thoughts are represented. So if you're getting back the feelings powerfully and you're re-experiencing it, that's telling you that your mind is reassociating with that memory. So you're going back and replaying it as if you're there. And very often with these bad memories, once was more than enough, right? The only thing worse than the one time would be replaying it in your head over and over again for 20 years. So that's where there's certain mechanics, how you can change how you're thinking, how those thoughts are represented. And you can fix a lot of phobias just by getting people to do a double dissociation, where you go from being in the memory to then dissociating, where you're looking at yourself, poor old Jimmy in the memory, and then you can even run the memory backwards, and you're changing how these memories are represented, so that way it changes how you feel. It doesn't eat you up. And then you have to replace those crappy thoughts with better thoughts. And the more you do it, the brain learns a pattern, then it'll do it automatically.
I have two phobias. I'm going to throw them at you, brother. So when I was 10 or 11, I had a Doberman Pinscher come right in my face and just scarred me. Like I'm terrified of any dog bigger than a Chihuahua. So,
yeah.
I get that tense feeling, and I avoid big dogs, even if they're not barking. Just the size of it, it brings lots of fear in me. I was just in PetSmart the other day to get a little brush for my cat, and a lady brought in her two big dogs. First thing I like German Shepherd dogs. Yeah. First thing I did was go hide in an aisle.
Yeah.
40 years later, and I'm hiding from that fear.
Oh yeah. And that is an example, Jimmy, where you have one experience, and that shows your brain's capacity to learn in one shot. So when I started learning about phobias, I was like, okay, if you can learn in one shot something really nasty like that, then you can learn the best stuff ever in one shot too. It works both ways. But what happens is that, that's one way phobias develop, is you have a really bad memory experience, and there was so much adrenaline pumped in that when you think about those thoughts, they're so big. And I bet you the image is big, bright, nasty right in front of you. And the heart palpitations right now.
My heart is racing thinking about it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. So what I would do with you, Jimmy, is we would change how that thought's represent. I'd probably start with having you just take a nice deep breath in through your mouth, just breathing in some air. Hold it. Slowly let it out through your nose. And what the heck, everyone watching this could do a little fast phobia cure here. And what I'd like you to do, Jimmy, is I'd like you to just, if you want to do it, I would do a little dissociation where I'd have you just kind of float up, see poor old Jimmy, watching Jimmy in that memory. We'd go to the end of the memory, then we would rewind the memory, and we would leave that memory dissociated. So that way, basically, and then we would probably put it far in your past where it belongs, probably 40 years worth in your past, not smack right up in front of you.
Right. Well, what's funny is since that happened so long ago, I have touched big dogs, but it was freaking me out. Like I touched them. It was like, okay, get me away. But it's like I'm slowly trying to, at least from the physical aspect of things, not the mental aspect of things, disassociate from that fear by being willing to touch a dog that I have seen as fearful basically my whole life now. But what you're saying is reprogram it brain-wise, then that becomes easier.
That becomes way easier. And there's so many ways you can do it. This is where I really love getting into the mental work, is because it's very much like artistry. Like we could focus completely on the feelings, Jimmy, on those feelings of fear that you get, and have you start controlling your feelings viscerally and be able to get past the fear phobia that way. Now, just a side little mention, we're having fun here. This is where it drove me nuts. Where if you went to see, if you went in and every school of psychology is a little different, but there were schools of psychology that would take you having that experience about your dog and start asking you about your mother. And I would go, what the heck does your mother have to do with this?
Oedipus.
And that's where, our unconscious mind and our brain always overgeneralizes, overcompensates. And that fear was functional at a certain point in time. If that happened when you were 11, and a big dog was like that, it was a functional fear, right? It's not an irrational fear. So this is where sometimes fears and phobias, you want to identify where it's rational, where it's irrational, and, then be able to reprogram that. Because, maybe, if it's someone watching this, they got a fear of dogs and they have the woman of their dreams and she comes with a little dog. And, you have no choice but to change how you feel if you want to be with that woman. So then it could be practical to learn some of these techniques.
Although that gets at something here. People alter choices that they would make but for fears that they have in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about it. If a girl's hot and you want to be with her, but she's got something like a dog that you're fearful of, are you going to let your desire for the hotness of the girl supersede your fear of the dog? Not everybody would. Some would say, oh, okay, that's a non sequitur. I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah. So that's where working with someone, you'd want to find out if you want to basically find the gold in someone, because everyone's conquered a fear. Everyone's done something that's really difficult and overcame something. And the way they thought about that is different than the way they think about this fear or anxiety that's eating them up. So you really want to just get them thinking how they thought when they succeeded and basically kicked butt, have them think in the same way to produce that same success in these other areas of their life.
Okay, and the other fear, this one, I was about 8. My dad and I went fishing, and at the end of the fishing, he was in his trunk putting away the tackle box and everything, and he turns around and says, here, hold this, and he throws this rubber snake up in the air, and it's like I can see it in my mind's eye right now, and I'm shaking even a little bit, and it lands on my face.
Oh shit!
So I think a real live snake is about to eat my head, and then I look at it on the ground, and it was a rubber snake. But even though it was fake, I'm still terrified of snakes today. I remember being on a disc golf course with a buddy of mine, and this black snake comes up, and I'm like a little girl just screaming. And Now, one way I've kind of sort of overcome it was I have chickens in my backyard now. And so when I first got the coop, there was a big black snake that was all coiled up in one of the nesting boxes, ate all my eggs that day. And I was able to scoop him out with a shovel. I'm just like shaking in fear, but I scooped him out, put him in a bucket, stuck a lid on him. And so, again, should have done the brain work before physically encountering a snake.
It would have made it a little bit more enjoyable for you. You wouldn't have been risking a heart attack while getting the snake there. It basically seems like, Jimmy, you needed a little bit of the get rid of bad memories technique.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are major ones, man. Like the rest of my life, I went through like child abuse when I was a teenager. I've overcome that. Like I don't fear my dad anymore like I used to. I did for many years. Like when I left the house and got out of the abuse, it was 15 years just to kind of come to terms with what happened. And then just recently where I really have come to terms with having compassion for what happened and more understanding rather than having anger about it anymore.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You can come to that realization. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that stimulus of self-awareness to kind of understand why, how their parents were acting the way they are. And I guess, sometimes it could be just the way that they were raised, and they're just carrying out, how their father treated them. And, and that's one important thing, for everyone listening to this, is kind of develop that meta awareness to understand how and why people are behaving the way they are. Because when you understand that, then you can start to massively influence it. Right. And that's when, the fun really comes in on the persuasion side, because if you want to build a business, you better get good at persuading people, because whether you know it or not, you got to have some selling persuasion skills. That's wonderful. You were able to overcome that. And I mean, you're doing great things today. So that's wonderful.
Thank you. And I often tell people, it's easy to regret bad circumstances like that in your life. But then you think about it a little deeper, Chris, and you go, well, wait a minute. Had I not gone through that, would I be the same person that I am now? And I think everyone's life experiences, no matter what you've been exposed to, no matter what your brain has thought about things over the years, no matter what that is, you can look back and say, because of all those things, who you are now. Like, I think about, if you take away the abuse when I was a teenager, if you give me a 2-parent household, if I get loving support at home, academically, would I have exceeded further? Would I have been able to qualify to go to an Ivy League school for college? Like, you think those things, and of course it's the whole what if, and I don't play those games because I'm a realist. Let's play in how things worked out. I'm pretty happy with how things worked out.
Good man. And I mean, where do you want to play? You want to play in the past, or you want to play in the future? Right? Because the past doesn't need to be, the future doesn't need to be a repeat of the past, unless, you keep aiming your past at your future. And that's the kind of cool thing about neuroplasticity, is that regardless of where you're from or what your past is, our brains are so malleable and flexible that you can really set any target you want for yourself in the future and get after it, and more often than not, achieve it, if not exceed it. So there does have to be, some work where you kind of clear away those past thoughts, those past memories, those past patterns, because let's face it, that will massively influence you. All this stuff when you're children and you're growing up and you're forming your mind, your brain, your sense of identity, stuff's going to massively influence you. So you definitely have to find your way through it. Everyone's process is a little different, and then you can get out and get after it and be the next Jimmy Moore.
Nobody wants to be the next Jimmy Moore. There's one and only, brother, and that's enough for the world. So yeah, I love it, man. So clean that screen, dude. I'm just kidding. It's so funny. You've had little things floating in the air in front of you. It's like, is that Corona? Is it like coming to get you, man? I'm just kidding.
It's all my love essential oils, which I've just serenaded by myself.
Yes.
Just kidding.
So let's get into the breath again, because I think that is something, I don't think people give enough attention to how controlling your breath and using your breath can do profound things on your mind. It's not just the oxygen that's doing. That's part of it. Yes. Oxygenating your cells and getting it into your brain. Talk about the breath work and why it helps.
Yeah. Your breath, and the yogis figured this out. Your breath is a gateway to control complete mind and body, including your neurochemistry, including your thinking. One thing I noticed, and you watch anyone having an anxiety attack or anyone getting anxiety or worrying, are they doing deep diaphragmatic breathing, or are they holding their breath up in their throat and not even taking one deep breath?
Right.
So there's a mechanical thing where it's very hard to be anxious and do deep diaphragmatic breathing at the same time. So breathing is one of the easiest ways you can do if you're dealing with anxiety or any difficulty, or if you do deep diaphragmatic breathing all the way down in through your abdomen, and it's called your Dan Qian, your energy center. If you do deep diaphragmatic breathing, it'll naturally calm your state. It'll naturally change how you're thinking, your neurochemistry and your nervous system, from a super sympathetic response to a more relaxed, calmer response. Very, very powerful. I mean, yogis dedicate their whole life by doing breathing visualization techniques to master mind, body, spirit. So I think anyone listening to this could add a little bit of breathing to their regimen. And it's one of the biggest problems. I mean, I work with autistic kids too, and it's the same thing, that there's a big mechanical thing where the lungs, the breathing is discoordinated, and you just coordinate breathing, and it'll also fix a lot of, stuttering problems, linguistic problems. Kids with dyslexia or people with dyslexia who have stuttering problems, you mechanically fix the breathing, and it starts to promote those cognitive processes.
Yeah, there was a TV show here in America about 20 years ago where they had contestants come and they stuck a heart rate monitor on them.
Yeah.
And the goal was, don't let your heart rate go above, I forget what the arbitrary number was, maybe 60, 70, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then started throwing stimuli at them to try to induce their heart rate to go up. And the ones that were most successful, they weren't allowed to close their eyes. So the most successful ones, you could see them, they were just like in a meditative breathing state. You would have been awesome on that show. But I remember one guy, his heart rate never got above 50. Like, he started in the 40s, and they had snakes jumping right in his face, like right in his face. They showed a completely naked woman. I mean, they were like every stimuli they could possibly put in front of him. They were trying to get his heart rate up, and they couldn't do it. Now, most people, when they got their fear, which we were talking about with the dogs and the snakes for me, then is when their heart rate went crazy because the adrenaline and all the memories and blah, blah, blah. But I thought that was an interesting, like, real world example of how your brain can fool you into thinking you're in a compromised position.
Absolutely. And that kind of represents a good opportunity for you, like, someone like yourself who's more evolved, a good place to actually practice these things, right? Because, if you can maintain your calm and composure over, what's for you, and this is all subjective, a very difficult situation, well, then that's going to kind of reprogram your brain and help you to move forward. And it's really powerful to have those experiences where you take something that was the most difficult thing, and if you can learn to function and thrive and get past it, then what it tells your brain is, hey, every other thing that was limiting me, everything else that seemed really difficult, hey, I can overcome it too, because I overcame this. And
so I don't need the change to television when I see a snake on the I literally do that, by the way. If I'm watching a TV show and a snake comes on, I change channel. Even if it's my favorite show, Survivor, watching that, and nope, I'm not watching. Okay, I'll come back in 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, I know what to bring you when I come visit you sometime. No, I'm just you wouldn't be a great Indiana Jones then, my friend. Come on, man. You gotta.
Okay, and here you go.
Yeah. Well, we'll do a little get rid of bad memory technique, and we'll clean that up for you.
Absolutely.
While maintaining a good rational fear of snakes, if you travel to certain places where snakes are present. Right. If I'm going to the outback in Australia, you can sure bet I'm going to be scared of snakes.
I didn't go to the outback when I went to Australia. I've been there 3 times over the past decade. And I stayed in the bigger cities. I went to one kind of secluded. They're like, hey, Mike, we're not going in the middle of the country. That's the 10 deadliest snakes in the world. I'm like, noted.
Yeah.
Well, man, so what's next for you? Lockdown and COVID and all the other things have made it challenging to go speak and do live hypnotisms and all the work that you've been doing. Are you kind of moving to a virtual practice mostly?
Yeah, great. And that's really been the necessary adaptation is, let's face it, there's going to be a lot more business conducted online. So it serves you well to get online, start using the platform. So I've been doing weekly webinars and building an online community, training webinars. And I mean, we can't get 100% of the experience where there's live because, 90% of it's all live, unconscious cues, how someone's breathing, the kind of blood flow, coloration to their face, all these different things that you can use to help influence someone's state. But we can get very close. We can get to like 90%, very high levels. So I've been doing weekly webinars, building the online community, covering everything from focus, memory, all those juicy brain topics, having a great time, and building that up while also using the time to get these books rolling, get the writing rolling. And I mean, I've had a few clients who've just been pulled me and showing up saying, hey, look, you got to see me in person. So I kind of really had no choice about that. I was coerced in it. They're doing the whole guilt trip thing with me. Hey, you got to see me, so I'm like, okay, fine. But so I've been starting to see a few clients in person. Really been building up the online community with webinars and that kind of support.
Well, man, you're doing some great work. I can't wait to meet you in person someday, because I think you and I, we jived from the very beginning. We hit it off pretty well. Really look forward to meeting you someday. Again, you guys, the game changer, Chris Wylie, go check him out over on Instagram. And yeah, take advantage of some of the resources that he has available. Watch some of his videos. I mean, he does some really cool things. Mental disorders or state dependent. I mean, you're making all kind of videos all the time, man. I love what you're doing, and I just encourage you to keep up the good work.
Thanks so much, Jimmy, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you, brother, to do this interview. You've been rocking and rolling your show for a while, so I've been watching and listening from almost 10 years now. So yeah, keep doing your thing, and I can't wait to see you in person, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.